Coming up next on Stop the Threat, it's a muggy summer night. It's dark, it's late, you're unarmed and alone. Walking through a deserted parking lot on your way to the car. This bad mix of errors could become a serious mistake. Has this happened to you? Stop the Threat starts now. Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is James Towle. On today's episode, we'll take you to South Carolina, where we will reenact a strong-arm robbery that takes place in a parking lot, which we call change of heart. South Carolina is a shall-issue state, and it also has a castle doctrine. Let me introduce you to this week's panel. Rob Pincus, founder of the Association of Defensive Shooting Instructors, which we're going to hear a little bit more about in a minute. Kathy Jackson, author of The Cornered Cat, and Wes Doss, president of Kyber Interactive Associates. All right, now we all want to know what's going on with this. This is some new title. This
is something new. The Association of Defensive Shooting Instructors has been formed by a lot of the leadership of the training industry to help anyone who's currently teaching people defensive shooting, whether it's law enforcement, security, or concealed carry permits, home defense, to get better at their job, to continue their education and continue their professional development. So we're offering online training, articles, and videos for people that are interested in teaching others.
And how do they?
Shootinginstructors.org.
Shootinginstructors.org. And this is an online, I think it's a good idea.
Yep. It's all distance learning.
I don't think anyone's doing that.
No one's doing it. People have done it in niches before. So you'd have, especially like in law enforcement, firearms instructors have had communities dedicated to helping increase their professionalism. And we're doing it across the board now for the private sector as well.
Okay, so you founded this yourself.
We've got a lot of great people involved. So
okay.
Marty Hayes is involved, Tom Gibbons, Masad Ayub, Mike Seeklander. We have an advisory committee, and we've got a staff, and we're off and running. We're offering online courses as well as videos and articles to help people get better.
That's a pretty strong staff. Yeah, okay. Wes, I know that you're on tour. How's that going?
So far, so good.
Fill us in a little bit about that tour for those of us who may not have seen your last segment.
Well, the tour is the Light Sights and Lasers U.S. tour. Mm-hmm. It's got us on a hectic schedule, 19 host locations over a 9-month time frame, taking us everywhere from Hawaii to Alaska, up and down the eastern seaboard, throughout the Midwest. All hosted by law enforcement throughout the country.
Right, so this is really for law enforcement.
It is this year. Our initial year it was an LE only year, LE military security, right. And looking at 2014 of branching that into other locations, continuing on with the tour.
All right, good. Kathy, what's going on with Kathy?
I've been teaching women all over the country. Been going around to different training facilities, actually managing to fill up classes. I've been I can't even begin to tell you how many states I've been in the past few months, but it has been amazing to see what's happening on the women's side of the training industry right now.
And the last book you did was The Cornered Cat, which is a very successful book. And I know because of your experience, you're working on something else or thinking about working on something else, right?
That is true.
Okay.
That's true.
I know you don't want to go into it much, right?
That's true, too.
Okay. When we come back, I am going to show you part 1 of Change of Heart. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. We're going to go straight to part 1 of Change of Heart. Let's look at that.
Give me your money.
Okay, I think every rule in the book has been broken on this one. What do you think?
I think that it is always good to have your keys in your hand before you get to your car. You know, the thing that struck me about that, though, James, is I bet she felt like that guy came out of nowhere. Like there was some magic that happened. But we know that nothing comes out of nowhere. That guy was actually there, and she just didn't see him because she wasn't looking.
Yeah, I think there was a whole lot of things that went wrong there. She didn't seem to look into the parking lot. She didn't seem to want to be aware of what might be taking place around her.
Yeah, just, you know, another reminder to take a look around, to be ready, to not get fixated on any individual task when you're in a public environment. That ambush is always out there. You know, and that's why, unfortunately, we do have to focus a lot of our training on being caught off guard. But if you can avoid that situation, so much the better.
Yeah, and I have to remind viewers again, these are real criminal incidents that are taking place. It's hard to believe in today's society that a woman would be parked in a dark parked area, come out into that area after dark, not be aware of what's going on, and to fumble around with keys. I mean, I don't know anyone personally that would. Huh?
I think we can say it's surprising in this day and age, but it's still way too common an occurrence. And you know, different circumstances, jobs, work being the way they are. I mean, you never know where you're going to park a car at. You know, we could do the situational awareness debate on what you can and can't do, but you know, you're absolutely right, and it would be a whole nother show, literally, about attentional blindness issues, to talk about what the things that we aren't seeing transpire because we're not looking for them. Right. You know, just having a good general idea of what's around you, you know, is paramount, no matter what it is.
Let's spend a minute or two on that. Okay, this is the situation. She did park. Maybe the street light went out. Okay, so she comes out after work, the street light's out. What's the first thing you want to do?
I think of a parking lot as a fringe area. I got that phrase from Mark MacYoung. I know he's been on the show before. Mark talks about the fringe areas, and that's anywhere that's in between where there's lights, crowd, safety, lots of people around, and a more isolated environment. The isolated environment, you're not going to find any victims there. You know, if you're a criminal on the hunt, you have to have a supply of victims. So where that criminal is going to be is on the edges, on the fringes. Parking lots are classic fringe areas. That's where you look around. And, you know, not to belabor that point, because I want to add something else, and that is that everybody's awareness fails at certain times. You used the attentional blindness. I'm sure you've seen the study, Wes, where it talks about the invisible gorilla. Have you seen that book? You're familiar with it? People just don't notice what they're not looking for, what they're not expecting to see. And one of our challenges as trainers is to help people learn to look for those things.
Okay, I think the most obvious is, number one, yes, she probably didn't look around, but she knows it's a dark area, and she doesn't have her keys out. I mean, she's kind of like walking into a problem and making the problem larger. I mean, if you're going to come out into a dark area and you know that, okay, I can't see everything I'd like to see, let me get the keys out, at least.
Actually,
that may be one thing.
Yeah, we're talking about getting the keys out. You keep saying dark area. Rob, you carry a flashlight?
Quite often, yeah.
Wes, you carry a flashlight? There's no reason not to have one of those little tiny super bright flashlights anymore, and that dark area has suddenly become...
Yeah, especially if you're going to say in today's day and age with a subject, that one thing alone in today's day and age, it doesn't make any sense why more people don't have some sort of illumination on them. They're not that expensive any longer.
Okay, let's play good guy, bad guy for just a second. Let's set up a scenario. She comes out, it's dark, she goes into her purse, and she finds her keys, but she doesn't take her hand out of the purse. She walks to the car as though there's something in her purse besides the key, which could have been, right? So now you're the bad guy and you see the woman approaching, and instead of withdrawing her hand, which you're expecting her to do, she's looking around with her hand in the purse. As the bad guy, are you now going to take a second look and go, hey, I wonder if she's got a gun?
I think it's possible, you know, depending on I think from our community standpoint, we would say, oh, that person might have their hand on a gun. Whether the bad guy's savvy, you know, the bad guy's a bad guy, and he's out there doing deviant things. So I don't like to give him too much credit, but it's certainly possible that you could warn somebody away. My fear would be that someone says, well, I'm just going to pretend I have a gun, so I don't actually need a gun, because I'll scare the bad guy away.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would be a bad habit to get into, I agree.
Well, yeah, I think along with that, I mean, the whole thing of we have too many created absolutes in this industry. Well, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. Well, not necessarily. There's way too many variables to say that that's actually going to transpire the way that you're expecting it to happen. You know, well, I'm going to pretend I have a gun. Why? You know, why? I mean, just, you know, get from point A to point B expeditiously and safely. Well, I'm going to do this. That's going to scare them off. Are you sure it's going to scare them off? I mean, what makes you so sure that's actually going to happen?
And if there's an option, can't you go back inside?
Absolutely.
And maybe get someone and say, hey, listen, would you mind walking me to my car? You know, if you're not happy with giving advice to people to fake the gun, and I realize that's probably a mistake, then there's nothing wrong with turning around, going back inside and say, hey, listen, if you're not doing anything, how about just walking me out to my car? You know, and security or somebody you work with. Hey, when we come back, I'm going to show you part 2. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. We're discussing change of heart, a robbery that takes place in a parking lot. So far, the young lady has broken all of the rules, and now I'll show you part 2, what took place.
Money.
Get off me!
You're dead.
Stop or I'll shoot!
Okay, I think that was a surprise. Was anybody expecting that?
Well, we are on Stop the Threat.
True, but normally when we see someone suddenly come up with a gun, they're usually pulling the trigger shortly thereafter. And she did show some restraint. What do you think of that?
I think her actions were fine. I think, however we get that labeled, though, I think we need to look back at that as an armed robbery as opposed to a strong armed robbery, though, because you're missing the ability to put that guy further behind bars by calling it a strong armed robbery. That knife came out, it's an armed robbery.
Okay.
Aggravated assault, armed robbery.
Okay. And you would differentiate that from strong arm because?
Strong arm is just hands, just bullying somebody
Yeah,
into
okay.
it.
So
by-
it was a
by
strong
force of
arm
fear.
robbery up until the time
He brandished the weapon, it's an armed
popped
robbery.
the knife open, then it went. Okay. All right. Any comments?
I think that what's important here is that she fought back. Without the tool, she still, I'm assuming it was a kick or a knee or something that pushed him back from the doorway and escalated him to going for the weapon because he felt like the strong arm robbery wasn't going to be enough. Now he was going to escalate things. So that fighting back, not relying on the tool, if she'd have turned her back on him and just reached the glove compartment, that could have gone completely differently, wrestling with the gun in close quarters. She did something else first, fought to the defensive tool, and that's what allowed her to stop the threat.
Okay, according to the crime report, based upon what the perpetrator says, he was only interested in her purse. And that was the whole emphasis of why he attacked her, was to get the purse. And yes, she did kick him back out of the car with a kick to the groin, which is probably a little more excruciating than we saw. And at that point, he did pop the knife open and get very determined.
Threatened, said, you're dead.
Threatened to kill her.
Right, and then made that remark. I mean, I guess I can see that happening. I don't think his intention was to show that weapon, but rather to grab the purse and go away. Now, I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that as a situation developed, it got worse.
Well, it did get worse, but I have to point out that you have only the criminal's word, what he intended to do there.
Sure.
And
Okay, yeah,
this will
of
come as a
course.
shock to everybody I know, but criminals lie.
No.
They do. They do. They lie.
Nah,
And-
you're right. You're
And
absolutely
especially when they are, for instance, maybe talking to the police in expectations
yeah.
that maybe we can reduce that charge from
Right.
something more severe to something less severe.
Okay, maybe I should clarify that by saying his record did not show him doing anything more
There we go.
violent than petty theft. Okay, maybe I should have said that, but you're correct, because you would have no way of doing that, and of course you wouldn't expect him to tell the truth to Ellie anyway, right?
No, absolutely
So,
not.
okay,
I mean,
all right.
but just even having that on him certainly could have been spun up into an armed robbery with intent because you were carrying a weapon. It's not a burglary tool, it's a knife.
Right.
It's not a screwdriver or a coat hanger or something to get into a vehicle, it's a knife.
Okay. Wonder why she didn't have the gun with her. Has anybody thought that?
Well, a lot of people are not comfortable carrying firearms. They're comfortable with the idea of using one, but I was talking to somebody last night who told me that, and she told me how old she was, and she said, all my life I've never needed to use a weapon, so why in the world would I want to carry one? And that is a very, very normal way to think about things. It's unfortunate that it's not about the odds, though. It's about what's at stake. So, you know, for me, I like to have that weapon immediately accessible as opposed to out of reach. But, you know, you made a really good point about being able to fight to the weapon.
Yeah, and even if it's on your body, I mean, imagine again,
Right.
she doesn't think about kicking, she doesn't think about defending herself, she doesn't think about pushing away, she just reaches to her belt line, takes her hands out of the fight, he gives her one good punch, she's knocked out, there's a gun there, and who knows what he's going to do. So I think that this idea that I'm most excited about talking about in this one is that it wasn't about the gun, it was about the fight. And the fight is what saved her, allowed her to get to the gun and bring an end to the situation.
Okay, and we're all happy with the fact she didn't pull a trigger.
I don't have any problem with that. She didn't need to.
So brandishing the
Willing to
weapon
do-
was enough.
Well, I'm not sure that I would even call that brandishing. She was preparing to shoot, and it turned out that she did not need to shoot. That's a very different thing from, oh, look, here's a gun, therefore you should run away.
Right.
She was absolutely prepared to do what she needed to do. It just turned out that she didn't need to.
Yeah.
We don't know if there were some voice commands there or anything like that when she brought the weapon up to bear. I think if I were to make a suggestion that a good, strong voice command would have followed that.
I thought she did. I don't know.
I heard
that in my
vocalization.
head.
Did she say?
I heard a
What did she say?
vocalization.
Does anybody remember?
Well,
Come any
think she
closer,
said-
Cue the
shoot
tape.
you, something like that?
Cue the tape, yeah.
She did say something, and maybe she did say enough, obviously, to scare off.
And there's no obligation to do that, right?
No, no, no.
Absolutely
but
not.
I think we would all be sitting here if she had shot and say, well, that was justified. That's what he deserved at that moment.
Right.
He brought that on himself. But you know, she's probably better off that she didn't.
The problem is solved. As far as getting a good description and being able to share with law enforcement what happened, we would hope that there were some security cameras that might help, and at the end it did show a security shot, but I don't know that you could have identified anything from there. What do you think?
no, it's too hard to tell and too hard
Right.
to see. I mean, another thing she may have done once she got on the phone is because it's kind of a desolate parking lot, is, I mean, get on the horn and try and draw some kind of attention. I mean, she's going to be rattled.
Yeah,
after
even if
this
she
is over
leaned on
with.
the horn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we come back, we'll talk more. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. We've just concluded Change of Heart, and I think we've all learned something from that particular reenactment. And after each one of these, and I know I'm going to get them after this one, I'm going to get a lot of emails. And I did receive an email, though, that I kind of want to throw this up on the table because it's come up over a number of shows. Mark sent me this email. My name is Mark, and I've been shooting for about 5 years now, and I'm a certified NRA instructor. I enjoy watching your show, but there's one thing I'd like to see you change on your show. I keep hearing you say weapon instead of calling it a handgun or a pistol, which I think would be more correct. What I consider a weapon is a knife, a bat, car keys, pens. I don't mean to be rude, Mr. Towle. I know that the police and the military use the word weapon, but everyone else calls them guns. Okay, Mark, you have a point. You know, I use the word weapon all the time. I can say this, Mark, that if the three of us were standing in a group and we were standing waiting in a restaurant and someone quickly went into their coat and came out with a gun, we would not say weapon. We would probably say gun. Anybody want to comment on that? It's a housekeeping kind of an issue.
Yeah, I'm not. The logic of we have to call this a gun, but we're going to call keys and pens a weapon. I think we're chasing terminology to be politically correct. Well, guns can't be seen as weapons. Well, guns are weapons, and this pen could be a weapon. And if it's being used to deliver force, whether it's defensive force, good guy force, or bad guy attacking force, I think weapon is okay.
You're okay with weapon?
I'm okay with it.
You're going to stick with weapon?
I stick with the weapon, gun, firearm. I'll call it anything interchangeably. I don't have a label I need to put on it for, meeting the political correctness checkbox.
Okay, we're standing out in front of the restaurant and somebody quickly comes out with a gun, you're going to say?
I'm talking about conversationally, which
Okay.
is what we're having here, is a conversation.
But
I'd probably not say anything. I'd probably worry about defending myself.
okay.
Calling out on something when somebody brandishes something, you're calling that out for identification purposes. You might yell knife, you might yell bat, you might yell gun, you might yell whatever. But when we're talking about something, what's the intended application of what it is we're talking about? You say your car keys are now a weapon. Well, are we going to drive a car with the gun, or are we using the gun as a weapon? So
Right.
where's the harm in calling it a weapon?
Oh, okay.
There's a little bit more to it than that even.
Okay.
Look, sometimes people want to avoid the word weapon because we want to give the idea that guns are sporting equipment.
Exactly.
If your lawn darts could be outlawed, so could any other type of sporting equipment. Weapons are what's protected constitutionally in this country.
Okay. All right. Listen, I want to wrap this up by saying, if you don't have this book and you have not read this book, and I know everybody here at the table probably has, right? Then send me your email asking me for it. I've got a few left, and I will send it to you. Be safe, be trained, be alert. See you next week.